question. My wife didn't cheat behind my back. She cheated right in front of my eyes and expected me to accept it. Let me tell you, the moment I realized I wasn't.
Are you coming home yet? I texted my wife, Kara, as I sat alone in our living room. The TV was on, but I wasn't watching. She replied a few minutes later, still out with coworkers. Don't wait up? Lately, that was her favorite message. I stared at the phone, a hollow feeling growing in my stomach. When did our marriage become a series of late nights and vague excuses? I scrolled through our old photos, a time when her texts were filled with heart emojis and can't wait to see yous. Now they were cold and distant. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. It was my best friend, Mason. He sent me a screenshot without any context, but he didn't need to. It was Kara, at a bar I didn't recognize, leaning into some guy, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. My stomach dropped. I zoomed in on the guy's face, a complete stranger. I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm. I texted her again, my fingers trembling slightly. Everything okay? I waited. No response. The three little dots never appeared. The next morning, she walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. She gave me a light peck on the cheek, the kind of kiss you give a distant relative, not your husband. I'm going to a birthday party this weekend, she said casually, pouring herself a coffee. Whose? I asked, my voice tight. She hesitated for just a second, but it was long enough for me to notice. My ex, Dylan, but relax, it's just a party. We're all friends. My chest tightened. An ex? The one she always said was a bad memory? I looked at her, trying to find the woman I married. You really think that's appropriate, Kara? She rolled her eyes, a gesture that had become painfully familiar. It's not cheating if I tell you first, she said with a smirk, as if she'd just discovered a brilliant loophole in our vows. That line stuck in my head like poison. It wasn't a reassurance, it was a warning. It was her telling me she was going to do whatever she wanted, and my feelings were irrelevant. The conversation was over. She just picked up her coffee and walked away. Later that night, the unease was eating me alive. I messaged Mason again. I think she's pushing boundaries on purpose. It feels like she's testing me, he replied almost instantly. Man, she's been checked out for months. You've just been refusing to see it. I hated that he was right. I'd been making excuses for her, for us. I'd been clinging to the memory of what we were, not accepting what we had become. Saturday came, and the apathetic wife was gone. In her place was a woman preparing for a first date. She spent an hour on her makeup, tried on 3 different dresses, and settled on a little black number that she hadn't worn in years. As she grabbed her purse, she turned to me. Don't text me all night. It'll be rude to be on my phone. Then without a hug, without a proper goodbye, she left. I listened to her heels click down the hallway, the sound of the front door closing echoing through the silent apartment. I sat there, staring at that closed door, feeling more alone than I ever had. Around midnight, my phone lit up. Another message from Mason. Bro, you need to see this. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was a photo. Kara, at the party, sitting on Dylan's lap. Her arms were wrapped around his shoulders, her head resting against his, a blissful smile on her face. She looked like she was home. It was a level of intimacy she hadn't shown me in years. The world tilted sideways. I felt sick. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I texted, no reply. It was in that moment of crushing silence that I finally understood. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was just the guy who shared her address. I was a legal formality, a piece of paperwork she hadn't gotten around to filing yet. The next morning, she stumbled in, smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers and cheap champagne. She smiled lazily when she saw me on the couch. Hey, you're up early. She tried to kiss me, but I pulled away. Don't be dramatic, she sighed. It's not a big deal. I looked her dead in the eyes and asked her point blank, Did you sleep with him? She scoffed, her amusement like a slap in the face. Grow up, Ryan. You're so sensitive. I didn't say another word. I just nodded slowly. Her dismissal was the final confirmation I needed. That afternoon, I drove to my lawyer's office. I showed him the text, the photos. He reviewed everything carefully, his expression grim. After a long, heavy pause, he looked up at me and said, You have everything you need to proceed. There was no turning back now. On Monday, I went to the bank and closed our joint account. splitting the money evenly into 2 separate ones. On Tuesday, I called our landlord and had the lease transferred solely into her name, paying the fee myself. By Wednesday, the consequences started to catch up with her. She called me at work, her voice sharp and irritated. Why was my card declined at the grocery store? She demanded. It's a separate account now, I said calmly. You can't do that, she snapped. I already did, I replied and hung up. Thursday morning, the divorce papers were delivered to her at her office. I knew the exact moment she got them because my phone rang live. What the hell is this? She shouted into the phone, her voice a mix of fury and disbelief. It's me growing up, I said, echoing her own words back at her. There was a sudden, stunned silence on the other end. Then her voice barely a whisper. So that's it? It's over? That's it, I confirmed. The fallout was swift. 2 days later, Mason sent me another screenshot. This time it was a social media post from Dylan. He had publicly dumped Kara after she'd apparently asked him for help with her rent. His post was brutal. He wrote that she was fun for a party, not girlfriend material. The same woman who had thrown our marriage away for him was now being discarded like a used napkin. That night my phone buzzed with a text from her. Can we talk? I let the message sit for an hour before replying. About what? She wrote back instantly. About us. About everything. I miss you. I read the words, but they felt hollow. I didn't respond. The next morning, there was a knock on the door of my new apartment. I opened it to find her standing there, her face tear-streaked and puffy. I made a mistake, Ryan, she pleaded, her voice breaking. A huge mistake. Please, let's fix this. I love you. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger or sadness. I just felt nothing. I asked her softly, would you be here if he hadn't rejected you? Her silence was louder than any confession. It answered the question perfectly. You didn't lose me because of him, Kara, I told her, my voice steady. You lost me long before that. You lost me because you treated our marriage like an option and you treated me like I was disposable. She started to beg again, to make promises, but the door between us felt heavier than steel. There was nothing left to say. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said, and it wasn't sarcastic. I genuinely meant it. Then I walked back inside and gently closed the door. For the first time in months, the silence in my apartment didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. I sat on my couch and took a deep, slow breath, feeling a weight lift off my chest that I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. I finally understood that happiness wasn't something someone else could give you or take away. It was something you had to build for yourself, brick by brick. I looked out the window at the city lights twinkling in the dark. They didn't feel cold and distant anymore. They felt like possibility. And as I sat there, in my new home, in my new life, I whispered to myself, you're finally free. Thanks for listening to my story. If you're going through something tough, remember that your peace and self-worth come first. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. See you next time.